So everyone knows about how AI will disrupt the technological sector. AI is this huge technology that's already having major disruptions in things like how we work online, how we work together. But today I want to talk about some of the implications that AI will have in other areas of culture that are not talked about as much. So essentially, what we'll be talking about is how AI will influence perspectives and worldviews of the collective of people at large in the world, and how when you have enough power to create content and to shape perspectives using AI assisted systems and tools and agents, that your ability to have an influence on the future increases the more your ability to use these tools becomes. So let's dive right into it. So there's a couple different ways we could approach this conversation, but at its root, what we need to talk about is how content and media online are already how we get our information, right? Going from news and, yeah, like news outlets. People used to go to news outlets and television in order to get their news. And now media, broadcast media, such as what you're watching right now, this is broadcast media. I am broadcasting a message to you as the viewer on YouTube. And as you watching it, you are becoming influenced by my perspectives because you clicked on this video. And so this is how all perspectives and influence is going to happen online in the future. And so the thing to know here is that AI is getting increasingly better at both being able to distribute content writ large, like to be able to distribute larger amounts of content. And we're on the precipice of that, the quality of the content increasing. You'll see a million jokes online about how AI content sucks and AI articles. Everyone knows when it's AI written, but it's like AI's been around for, I mean, obviously a lot longer than a couple years, but like released to the public a couple years, and of course, like the content isn't great. It's been 2 years, give it 2 more years and it will be indistinguishable from human. It's almost at that point. So the people that understand how to distribute content writ large with AI, but also to make it hyper engaging, are the ones that are going to have the most amount of influence on the world, right? There's, as you can see here, influence amplification. AI tools multiply the reach of the ideas that you have. Where you, like right now, I am using AI to assist the amplification of my ideas. You're watching this video, but I'm using AI systems to chop this video into short form videos and into Instagram carousels and LinkedIn posts. And this video right now is the source of me posting probably 20 different posts online that I'm having repurposed based on what I'm talking about. And the transcript of this video is getting repurposed into each of the platforms and like what type of formatting each of those platforms likes and what works best on them, right? And so the better that I get at this, the larger my distribution and reach becomes, and the more influence my perspectives on AI specifically will be permeated into the collective consciousness, will be permeated into the collective psyche, and how we're collectively making sense of what is AI, how do we use it, how do we want to use it, what are good and bad use cases of it, what are the consequences of using it badly, etc., etc. And so that's my third point here, is that altered perceptions, AI driven distortions, the more that we use AI to distribute content writ large, the more that there's distortions in the reality field that we all share. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that we're all using certain lenses to make sense of the reality. We're all interpreting the world through a lens. And in the essence of the culture wars, I live in the US. It's election day right now. Today it's election day. And so the reason that there's these crazy culture wars is because how we interpret the world is radically different, and we're moving into various perspectives and lenses that are feeling like they're completely incompatible with each other. So what I'm interested in AI is not It's not like, oh, there's this cool new tool that does this thing. Like, obviously, I'm keeping up. If you're watching this channel, you know that I'm keeping up with how do I build systems and agents to augment my workflows. But there's like a bajillion SaaS products that are all AI, and it's like I don't really care about them. What I care about is the more meta things, the ways that AI will influence culture, and how do I want to be a vehicle for positive change in culture? Well, it feels to me like I have to use AI to do that because of the amount of leverage that can be gained by learning how to use AI well. But what I'm seeing in the world is that most people are learning how to use AI, and they're learning how to build leverage for the point of building leverage, not for the point of, like, they're not really, it's just like this kind of like mayhem of AI is so cool. I'm just going to like build all these AI automation systems and make a shit ton of money. And granted, I think it's very valuable. We're in a hype train, and you can build a business and learn how to sustain your livelihood using these tools in a way that's going to cost you a lot less time and attention and focus than maybe learning how to do copywriting or sales or anything, right? But what's most interesting to me is in learning how to use these tools and build these AI systems, what am I orienting towards in my life? What I'm really orienting towards in my life is essentially, how do I do the most good with AI? And it doesn't just mean getting good at AI. To do the most good with AI, it's like, how do I want to impact the culture? What are the second order effects of these systems that I'm building? Such as if I'm building a content system, the first order effect is that content is going out, or I'm selling the system and making money. The second order effect is that all of those pieces of content that are going out, depending about the prompt engineering that I use to create those, like the prompts that are used to create that content will have an impact on culture in some small way. And as I ramp up distribution, that impact will be larger. It'll be exponential. So I better learn how to prompt engineer so that I can understand what the impact is of culture on the ideas that I'm having. So on to the next thing. I've kind of been talking about this already, but the essence of this is that AI generated content is taking over. Like, give it 2 years and the majority of the content online is going to be AI generated, for better or for worse. But what this means is that if you become extremely good at AI generated content creation, then your ability to influence these the way that we're collectively making sense of the world, you will have a greater ability to influence our collective sense making, right? Your tools, your decisions become, in a sense, there's higher stakes in the decisions that you're making, because when I make a decision around distributing large amounts of content on the internet using AI systems, the impact of these decisions is much higher than if I were to just like put out 10 pieces of content for a client that I wrote by myself, right? Because now I can have influence on the culture in a way that I wasn't able to because the distribution is higher. And so it's a double-edged sword, right? We might get to a place where we're utterly overwhelmed with the amount of content that's coming out online because it's all AI generated. But the other thing is that we can realize that those who learn how to create AI generated content better are going to have more influence. And that if I can root into my ethics, if I can root into like deep integrity, such that I am trying to find ways to create a collective sense. How do I put this? I talked about how we're in these culture wars in the US in particular because our perspectives and lenses that we are putting on are seemingly incompatible with other people's lenses. So my goal in this space is, how do I distribute perspectives that are not incompatible with other perspectives, right? How do I amplify the reach and the influence of certain perspectives that are not incompatible with others, right? if you look at the U.S. culture wars, the right is enraged with the left, and the left is enraged with the right. But the left is saying like we are inclusive of all, and but not if you're on the right. And then if you're on the right, it's like f you, you're on the left. So I don't really want to dive into that rabbit hole right now, but the most important thing here is that AI gives us the ability to amplify our reach and our distribution. And as we're amplifying our distribution, then in amplifying our distribution, we have a greater responsibility put on ourselves to have deep integrity in the perspectives that we're putting out. Otherwise, we will be contributing to chaos. We'll be contributing to a world of greater fragmentation. So let's go on to the next slide. So there's a couple different ways to understand this, but like I'm basically talking about the same thing from a bunch of different angles. But the biggest thing to know here is this word cognitive manipulation. You are manipulating someone's worldview and distributing content. Now, in some way, a person is buying in based on clicking on something, but in another way, what caused them to click on it in the first place? Was it just like a clickbaity title or something, right? And so, in playing this content game, which is, I think, the game in the next 10 to 20 years, if you want to build influence, you have to learn how to play the content game well. Because, like, what are you just going to get really good at cold email or something? So if you learn how to play the content game well, you learn how to affect influence on the world. And in doing that, there is, in order to get people to click on your content, this was a different route I was trying to take. In order to get people to click on your content, you have to write somewhat clickbaity titles. Like the word clickbait, you have to write headlines and titles that grab attention. If you don't, people that do will win. But that is not an excuse to create clickbaity, attention grabbing content, right? You create the title that is attention grabbing, you create engaging content, but you can add depth and ethics and virtue in what you are speaking in the content. You're just packaging it up in an engaging way, because that is the game. And so you play the game while understanding and becoming conscious of the fact that you're playing it, such that you don't get caught and think that what is good is the same as what is effective, right? So as long as we can realize what is good and what is effective are different things, we can see that, okay, I'm going to make this choice for the purpose of effectiveness, and within the content of this video, I am going to be grounded in what is good. Then I am grabbing attention through the headlines and clicks that I'm getting, but yet the content is grounded in what is good. So it's kind of like it's like an ethical bait and switch. A lot of people bait and switch. They do a attention grabbing headline to get as many clicks as possible, and then the content is just as shitty as the headline is. An ethical bait and switch is when you use an attention grabbing headline in order to get someone to click on it, and the content is rooted in deep ethics. It is rooted in thanks for clicking on my clickbaity title. Like, let's talk about some real shit. Let's talk about where is the world heading, how do we influence positive change, and what AI systems, in the context of this niche in this channel, what AI systems and agents and all of these things can we build to enact positive change. So one of the things to think about is that if you're building these content systems, if you're getting good at them, inevitably you build them for yourself, maybe you build them for others as well. And so one of the strategic decisions, one of the strategic advantages is that once you understand how to build these AI systems, you have an advantage over other people. And so therefore your decisions about who you work with become increasingly important. And so if I'm thinking about how do I enact positive change, it's saying the people that you choose to work with are extremely important. It's much better to work with less people, offer them more value, charge them higher, but ensure that those few people that you work with, you're deeply aligned with the mission and what they're doing in the world, using that as the primary decision maker. Whereas if you're in this state of deep scarcity and taking any possible client that you can, you're probably going to end up contributing causes that are not good and that you would feel ashamed about later in life. And so there's a bunch of different components to this, and there's a bunch of different ways that this could play out. But the biggest one is there are these core paradigms that we operate under, right? So one of the objectives in missions with this channel is to bring to consciousness these core paradigms, these core assumptions of these paradigms. There's a lot of assumptions that we hold about AI. Oh, it's going to blow us all up, or it's going to create a utopia. Those are both very extreme. Or why would I even get into this in the first place if it's changing so fast that I can't, like, oh, I'm like scared it's going to take everyone's jobs, right? There's these core assumptions, and there's some validity in all of these core assumptions, but none of them are all inherently and objectively true. And so we can try on these different lenses, we can understand the core assumptions that we're holding about artificial intelligence, and in doing so, we can reshape these core assumptions in order to, with the goal of both understanding them, relating to them in a more healthy way, and feeling agentic, not to be confused with an AI agent, but you can see the root of the word agent is like to take action, to have agency. So the goal here is not to lose our own individual agency and sovereignty while we are building agents to do work for us. My goal with this channel is to both talk about the more theoretical sides of this in terms of how do we use AI to support our work in a way that leaves us feeling more empowered, where we are more energized and excited, and there's more aliveness in us to work on the things that bring us joy. We use AI to augment our work and all the things that we don't want to do, so that we can spend the majority of our time in our deepest purpose and meaning. One of my deepest purposes and meanings, and the thing that brings me the most joy, is videos like this. It's these videos where I'm connecting dots, I'm talking about paradigms, I'm talking about worldviews and perspectives, and how do we relate to things. It's like very philosophical in nature, taking like a very kind of philosophical approach to AI, but I also want this to be deeply practical. I want to balance this philosophical stuff with how do we actually build the systems. Let's get in and like start building it. But having this video, this type of video, this philosophical frameworks as the foundations for this work. And having collaborative dialogue. So I'm planning to get people on this podcast, on this YouTube channel in the future, to have dialogue about this stuff. And so a couple of the interesting things is, as we're building this, it's going to be, the word misinformation is really interesting. This is used in the culture wars in the US where I live. But it's a very interesting word because what is true and what is not? It's a fundamentally epistemological question about how do we know what is true? And so when one perspective says I know what is true, and therefore all the stuff that is not what I think is true is misinformation, this is weaponizing the word misinformation. It's saying that it's like demonizing others in the name of saying that they're misinformed. And so I think the deepest thing is, how do we think critically and understand the multitude of perspectives out there in a way that leads to greater agency, empowerment, and dialogue? Because who is credible and what is misinformation? These are very tricky topics. And so at the end of the day, a lot is going to be disrupted. There's massive implications. Artificial intelligence brings about massive implications for the world, for culture, for every sector of business that you can think of. And that is what we explore in this channel. We explore the ways that it's disrupting and increasing the effectiveness of doing business. That being said, with great power comes great responsibility, and I will be continuing to deepen into these philosophical explorations of AI with the objective of providing solid ethical grounds and frameworks for us building these tools. So thank you for listening, and please subscribe.